watching us. This is Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. I'm your host, Search Out for Brochures. Today's episode is on a very potent and raw energy source. And as I've taught and as I've shared through, at least a decade at this point, likely longer, the benefits and the values of stress and frustration is we want to talk about what those things are. Frustration is when you have a goal or attachment to something and it not seem to be coming into your reality, or it's coming in some variation that's not quite meeting or living up to your preferred expectations of that thing, whatever it is. You want to accomplish something, and it's not quite there yet. And your timeline of expectation or idea of the way it's supposed to occur isn't lining up. Now, you can have micro values that are very challenging to be able to wrap your mind around, somewhere between your conscious and subconscious, running the background possibly, and then there's the things that are obvious in the forefront. So frustration, that's what frustration is that sensation, that feeling that you get. Not that I'm giving some sort of in-depth, explanation to rock your world in a new definition or insight. But nothing else, just to at least give you an idea about what I'm referencing here. Same thing with stress. Stress is an interesting thing because there's multiple different forms of stress. There's physiological stress, psychological, emotional. It's like there's digestive stress. There's so many different variations. To give you an idea, like benefits of digestive stress. Digestive stress is when the digestive system has to move food along, or the substance that you've consumed that cause peristalsis to function properly. And peristalsis is the rhythmic movement of your digestive tract that moves, those whatever's in the digestive tract through. It's a muscular contraction that runs throughout the length of your digestive tract. Excuse me. Now, if you were to, say, go on an all-liquid diet, well, the all-liquid diet would pretty much eliminate the digestive stress necessary for peristalsis to work properly, and has had in research shown to reduce lifespan due to lack of absorption. Also, food moves through, or nutrients and nourishment moves through the digestive tract far too quickly. So to eliminate that stress would actually be bad, not good. But we have this mental concept, this parameter around the idea of stress, which is brought on predominantly, in my opinion, by the optimistic movement, which is that stress is something to be eliminated. It's bad. Reduce it or eliminate it. Now, there's plenty of ways to look at this, but the overall concept of it is that's predominantly how people view it. So, stress itself, you need stress. Like when you exercise, stress helps you break down the muscle tissue so that the muscle tissue can respond by being more performance driven, if that's what you're conditioning for, give it more hypertrophy if you're looking to put on size. Whatever it is, it's the breakdown process, but it also releases other values. It's not just the muscle fiber. You also get a hormonal release that is highly beneficial as well. HGH is a good and a positive hormone that is a byproduct of breaking down muscle tissue, because it's a human growth hormone, which is restorative. Also, you can increase your melatonin, things like that. Melatonin falls into the same category. It's restorative. It's what puts you to sleep. It's a sleeping hormone, but it's restorative. It's anabolic, which is good for your health as well, and the proper balance. So, all right. So as far as not to go through an anatomy lesson here, or to go through physiology, but more of, and also chemistry, biochemistry, but endocrinology. There's a bunch of pieces there. It's more of the value of stress, and I've always looked at least in the last decade plus, I've looked at stress as being tuition. It's like going to college. You pay tuition for college, and that's to create the future self, right? Your future self. I look at stress the same way. I take on stress. I don't want stress eliminated out of my life. What I want is I want to have what stress brings. It brings us closer to whatever we have as a goal. So if you have a physical goal, your stress that you need to take on in order to achieve that is something that, we have science to back it on exactly how to do so. But we use the scientific process in order to accomplish that. And you see this in, the people that have made great progress. So that's the side for physical stress. Now, emotional stress, emotions are something they're tricky, because you typically will not ever, you typically aren't going to develop your emotional self and the safety and the cognitive space of your calm mind, and the comfort world of emotion. They need to be active, they need to be present in order for you to have the ability to mature them. So emotionally, you can bring on a lot of stress. That if you don't do something with that, it can consume you. So stress and frustration are fuel sources. They're an energy source that has so much potential, but because emotions distract us, like the ideas of loss or the ideas of not being good enough or whatever that specific piece is that's directly in relation to the emotion that's excited enough that's caused you, the direct awareness and upset, then that specific energy is like taking gasoline, and now you choose to either pour it onto yourself or you put it into something to change your current situation. For myself, I do a couple of things whenever I'm under high stress. The moment when I found out my father passed away in 2006, I did something that I really didn't realize that this was my method for dealing with high levels of stress. I started cleaning incessantly. I just had this overwhelming urge to just clean. And I was detail cleaning everything down to the absolute bottom crevice of opportunity to clean it. It was incredible how far I was willing to go. Instead of sitting in the awareness that I've lost my father was no longer alive, I cleaned. Now, I had done this previously, and I'd mentioned on a video about Pandora's Box, which is, if you haven't watched any of the Pandora's Box episodes, I highly suggest it. It does create a different insight on emotional safety places, if you will, or quarantine zones is probably a better way of putting it. Emotional quarantine. You just don't want to face something specific because it was too painful. It was too uncomfortable overall for you to even consider facing it. But when my father passed, I did. When the other event from Pandora's Box episode had to do with whenever the first thing that I told myself about women was between the ages of 8 and 10. So I immediately the switch went off, and I immediately put that energy into action and did something productive with it. Even though it wasn't, highly productive, it was a safety feature that I psychologically just switched over instead of sitting and just destroying myself with it. So more recently, with what I've gone through, that was an incredibly interesting and emotionally challenging place in my life, which is related to the events of the last month and a week, going on a month and 2 weeks, which the ending of a relationship, very, very impactful relationship to me. Instead of allowing that, now I didn't avoid anything. I went through the insights and the observations of what what the reality was created, like how I was responsible for what happened, and to the fullest responsibility, then I have the ability to access myself. Because from watching the series, I'm sure you'll see that, I do prefer to, use insight and then try to understand everything, as that's what I feel is my calling, is to understand and then to offer insight and guidance, if we can, something of direction in people's lives. Instead of letting that thing eat me alive, I let it do it to an extent, because I had to have the deepest impact. I did not want to obfuscate the true impact of that, the reality of what happened. Because I don't want to create that reality again for anyone, because of the consequences of what happened. It's not, myself is not the only one that was involved in that, and the damage, if you will, the incredible upset that was created in both of our lives, is something that I don't want to manifest in other people's lives unnecessarily. I really don't want that. I feel that there's a better way, there's a more mature developmental way of getting through situations like that, because that's what I choose. So after I let that energy do what was justifiable, which took time, and there was people in my life, there were quite a few people in my life that were, immediately there for me. They were there for me in such a way to try to support whatever I needed. The challenges that can show up, and what I made every one of these individuals aware that were presenting themselves to be there for me, I let them know I did not want to prematurely leave that pain, because that pain accessed something about me that I needed to access. It's not a masochistic place. That's not what it is at all. It was me being completely honest with myself about what it is that I was creating in the world, because I don't want to live irresponsibly. I want the absolute highest degree of responsibility I possibly can. And in order to do that, I have to be aware of my impact on myself and others. And that others means multiple degrees of separation from myself. And it's not like I'm, this, guru or anything like that. I am just coming, I prefer to try to live the most mature life that I possibly can. And I want to live the most enriched life that I possibly can. And by doing taking this stuff on the way that I do, it is not always comfortable, and people do want to support that, try to support me and get me out of that discomfort. It's a natural instinct, because it's that drives us in that direction. So I absolutely appreciate what they did, but I wanted the stress, I wanted the frustration, I wanted the upset, and I value it all. There's not a regret about how I handled things. If anything, I am incredibly grateful for the fact that I have that ability now, because I choose not to avoid anything, even whenever it's incredibly uncomfortable. But this is all speaking in the vein of, in the subject of stress and frustration. So what I gained because I chose to experience that is I gained a profound understanding of myself. I also gained a depth of understanding love at another level. Because I thought, because of the experiences that I've had, I thought I got it. I thought I knew it. I thought that was like, I had the experience of it, and it was what it was, right? Which is this beautiful nectar of experience with another human being. It's this really, really sweetened, delicious experience that it is the definition that is hard to give, right? Like it's a thing so powerful, it will make you face the greatest fears. even lead to the greatest sacrifice. That's what love is. Prior, I had my definition, which is still there. My definition is still there. But I would say that my definition is far more rich now than it was before. Because my definition of love is acceptance. But there's degrees of that, right? Like I love people that I interact with to the degree I accept them. Right? So the person at the gas station, if we use this definition, I love the person at the gas station. I accept her to the degree that they are a part of my life in a transaction experience, fueling my car, picking up things of convenience from the store, whatever it might be. I accept that's where they are. I honor them by giving them the presence while I'm there, which is, obviously, I make eye contact and I connect with people. That's my preference overall, and in all circumstances, is to constantly be connecting with people. But as you get deeper into more romantic relationships, you're accepting people at deeper levels, right? To the place where you're willing to share the goofiest and most strange things about yourself, the more embarrassing things about yourself. You're serving your softest underbelly, and someone else is experiencing it in such a way that leaves you with, I feel completely accepted, or I feel more accepted than I felt before. And that was this deepening of this experience of love. Now, great thing about it again is that it is something that, had I not gone through that, had I not faced the pain and the frustration of what has happened, the loss of everything, I wouldn't have that depth to the way I understand it at this moment. And I would not trade it for anything. I would not reverse what's happened if it were possible, because of how I've developed. So while I'm putting this out there because it's like, face it, right? I have, by comparison to other areas that I'm developed in, I have some emotional immaturity that I am aggressive about understanding and developing, because I come from a family, we're all boys. Emotions were signs of weakness because of the stoic ideas that men are raised in, and I don't dismiss those values, and I don't chastise them. I don't assign them some sort of term that they're a part of some sort of destructive, oppressive structure. I think a lot of that is just absolute nonsensical bullshit. It's just a philosophical masturbation. But I just did not show my emotions well, and with that came the rejection of being loved to degrees, right? And I see this in my daily, as of what I've done with stress and these frustration, the energy of frustration, is I have manifested that directly into my workout regimen and my self-care regimen. And within a very short period of time, I made a lot of changes. As an example, I went from 219 pounds to 202 pounds in 4 weeks, because of that just aggressive energy to better my state. And getting compliments from people about those changes. My denial of self-love, the dismissal of vulnerability, showed up in being complimented and ignoring the compliment, not acknowledging that somebody had just complimented me. That is a far deeper thing for me than it is just a compliment. Right, that's also my dismissal of vulnerability. It's my machinery. I have to deal with that when it shows up, because it shows up before I'm thinking about it. It's an instant reaction. I get a compliment and I dismiss it. Or I ignore it. I avoid it. It is the machinery does such a good job. It's almost as if it's not even on my radar to acknowledge. And often isn't until hindsight. Then I'm like, that person just gave me a compliment. Why did I not accept it? Why did I not acknowledge it? So that's the some of the insight that I got about love. And again, the reason why I've accessed this much and I've got to where I'm at with it is simply, again, because I've done this work. I've continuously put myself in a position to do this work. I'm not sabotaging anything in my life. I'm living it. No. So with that, I'm going to close up the episode, actually. I'm nearing my appointment. So, but I am going to say that it's always a choice. Choose what you want to do with this stuff. I chose not to burn myself alive with the pain of loss from my very recent experience here. I've chosen not to actually, just to sit there and let the flames of pain, frustration, and stress consume me. Now, I did use them to warm me up because I was cold in areas I didn't realize, as I mentioned about not having that depth of love. So now I'm at, I warmed myself up by sitting in it when my friends and my, companions in life had offered to support me as I was going through that painful experience. No, I was letting the heat, the flames of that loss warm me enough. Warm, not worn, but warm. It was warning me that I was living in a less than, I was living in a restricted reality that I created. All right. Well, with that, remember, stress is tuition for your future. If you use it the right way, you will, you'll take the right courses to get the life degree that you're looking for. Instead of taking a bunch of unassigned, inconsistent courses that lead up to a degree that's, that has little to no practicality in your life. As you're spending your stress bucks, if you will, your stress money, or your energy for growth, as you're spending that, you can potentially spend this in such a way that to create something useful in your life. Again, that's my preference. I want every instance in my life to be usable. I want it all to work in a way that I can better lives, not just my own. All right, with that, again, I am your host, Sir Chad Everett Broshears. This is Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. Remember, stress and frustration is an energy you can use. It's just a matter of how do you put it into something useful for you instead of burning yourself alive. Remember, living this life that you want to create is not always easy. It can actually be pretty hard at times. It's well worth it. So stick with me, and we'll create that life together. All right, enjoy. See you on the next one.